The group stage of the 2026 World Cup is over. 48 nations played 3 matches each across 16 days, and 32 of them advanced. The bracket is set. The knockout path from here to the final in New Jersey on the 19th of July is drawn, predetermined, fixed. And somewhere in Buenos Aires, in the cafes and the football bars and the streets where the replica shirts have never fully come off since the night in Lusail 4 years ago, Argentina are smiling. Because while France and Spain and England and Portugal and Morocco and the Netherlands look at their side of the bracket and see a gauntlet, a path where multiple world-class opponents must be defeated before the semifinals even come into view, Argentina look at theirs and see something considerably more navigable. And they are not wrong. Let's be precise about what the bracket actually looks like before we get into why it's generating so much frustration from so many corners of the football world. Argentina finished top of Group H. Their round of 32 opponents are Cape Verde, a team of extraordinary spirit and genuine quality who became the smallest nation ever to reach the knockout rounds in their World Cup debut, and who haven't won a single match across 3 group games, despite drawing all 3. If Argentina beat Cape Verde, which every ranking and prediction model considers likely, they face either Australia or Egypt in the quarterfinals, both teams who reach the stage from outside the top 20 in the world. Their semi-final from that bracket would come from the quarter that also contains Switzerland and Algeria, Colombia, and Ghana. There is no France, no Spain, no Portugal, no England, no Brazil in Argentina's half of the draw until the final itself. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bracket, France and Spain sit in the same half. England and Portugal sit in the same half. Morocco and the Netherlands, 2 of the most impressive teams of the group stage, are in each other's way. Brazil face the winner of that side if they advance. The upper bracket, as analysts have taken to calling it, contains what amounts to 6 of the 8 most dangerous teams in the tournament, arranged in a configuration where they cannot all survive to the semifinals. Someone remarkable is going home early. Multiple remarkable teams are going home early. And Argentina, the defending champions, the team with Messi in what is almost certainly his final World Cup, arrive at the knockout stage, having been gifted by the mathematics of the draw and the group stage outcomes, one of the most straightforward paths to a final that any defending champion has ever enjoyed. So, what's really happening here, and how did the bracket end up looking the way it does? Let's start with what FIFA actually built into the draw process, because the structure matters before you can understand how the outcomes diverged from the intention. FIFA announced ahead of the tournament that in the interest of ensuring competitive balance, the top 4 ranked teams, Spain, Argentina, France, and England, would be drawn into opposite pathways, meaning they could not meet until the semifinals. That was the stated principle: competitive balance. Keep the best teams apart for as long as possible. The intention was reasonable. The execution, combined with the chaos of the group stage, produced a bracket that several football federations and analysts have described as one of the most lopsided in the competition's modern history. The critical point is that the bracket's final shape was determined not only by the draw, but by what happened during the group stage, and specifically by decisions made by teams that could see the bracket taking shape in real time. Norway's match against France in their final group game became the most discussed tactical episode of the entire group stage, when Ståle Solbakken rotated heavily and fielded what was widely described as a significantly weakened lineup. Norway, having already qualified in second place, were unable to catch France in the group regardless of the result. But the difference between finishing first and second mattered enormously in terms of the bracket. Second place from Group I sent Norway to the softer half of the draw, while first place would have placed them directly in the most demanding corridor of the entire knockout stage. They lost 3-0 to France, they finished second, and now they face Ivory Coast in Dallas, a genuinely difficult but navigable quarterfinal path, while a first-place finish would have placed them directly in the most demanding corridor of the entire knockout stage. Solbakken was asked about the team selection decision. He was careful. He said he had picked a team capable of winning. He said they had goals across the squad. He insisted this was not a deliberate calculation to engineer a more favorable bracket position. The football world, watching the lineup card arrive and processing its implications, was not entirely convinced. Rotating against France in a match with no consequence for your group position while the bracket takes its final shape is the kind of decision that is difficult to separate entirely from the knowledge of what finishing second versus first would mean. Norway will deny it. The bracket speaks for itself. Then there was the Algeria versus Austria match, the final group game in Group K. A 3-3 draw, 2 goals scored in second-half stoppage time that sent both teams into the knockout rounds. Algeria as one of the best third-place teams, Austria as group runners-up. Jordan were eliminated. The match has been described by multiple outlets, including ESPN's bracket coverage, as the tournament's biggest grudge match, specifically because Algeria are now facing Switzerland in the round of 32 on the strength of advancing through a group where their final fixture against Austria contained late goals that changed the picture of who qualified and where they landed. The drama of that match and the specific bracket consequences it produced has led to a fixture that many are now treating as a lightning rod for the broader anger about how the knockout stage shaped up. Here is the core of the complaint, stated plainly. England, France, Spain, Portugal, Brazil, Morocco, and the Netherlands, some of the most technically accomplished squads in this tournament, are effectively arranged in a bracket designed to produce early collisions between elite teams. France will face Spain or Austria in the quarterfinals if the result hold. England faced Portugal or Croatia before that. Netherlands already faced Morocco in the round of 32. Brazil faced Norway and then potentially the winner of France-Spain. These are quarterfinal matchups in a bracket that, on the other side, offers Argentina the prospect of Australia or Egypt before a potential semifinal against Algeria or Switzerland. The response from teams and their football communities has been pointed. If you look at the post-group stage coverage across European football media, the bracket analysis has been consistent in its verdict. One side of the draw is dramatically more demanding than the other. The Netherlands, having produced one of the most defensively impressive group stages of any team in the tournament, drew Morocco, equally unbeaten, equally well organized, as their round of 32 opponent. They went to penalties. Morocco eliminated them. They're both good enough to have gone much further. The knockout format, applied to 2 teams who deserved better paths, produced a result that was a loss for the tournament regardless of who went through. Morocco's players and media have been vocal about this. A nation that reached the semifinals in Qatar 4 years ago that has been building its football infrastructure specifically to compete at this level, was placed in a bracket position that required them to defeat one of the best defensive teams in Europe just to reach the quarterfinals. They did it. They eliminated the Netherlands on penalties. But the path they've been given from here takes them into the quarter that contains Brazil, a route that France and Argentina don't face until much later, if at all. The historical comparison worth drawing is the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, where the draw produced a so-called group of death featuring Germany, Portugal, Ghana, and the United States, while other groups were considerably more straightforward. That imbalance generated discussion at the time, but the 2014 knockout bracket, operating with 32 teams, was structurally more balanced than what a 48-team format produces, when 16 groups reduce to 32 knockout spots, and the bracket is predetermined by group position. The expanded format's benefit, more teams, more nations, more football, comes with a structural cost. The bracket becomes increasingly susceptible to the specific outcomes of 12 simultaneous groups, and when those outcomes produce lopsided distributions of quality across the 2 halves, there is no mechanism to correct for it. FIFA's response to the structural criticism is that the draw was conducted transparently, the bracket was predetermined and publicly known, and teams earn their positions through their own performances. That is technically accurate. No one is alleging that the draw was rigged or that specific teams were placed deliberately. The argument is structural rather than conspiratorial, that the mechanism FIFA built, combined with the 48-team expansion and the predetermined bracket format, creates conditions under which lopsided outcomes are not just possible, but predictable. and that when lopsided outcomes arrive, the governing body has no mechanism to address them. Argentina faced Cape Verde in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium, a few miles from Inter Miami's training ground, where Messi spends his club career. The symmetry is not coincidental. Cape Verde, whose story of becoming the smallest nation ever to reach a World Cup knockout stage in their debut, is one of the genuine joys of this tournament, will face the defending champions and the sport's greatest ever player in a stadium that is, in every meaningful sense, Messi's home turf. Argentina will win. The prediction models, the ranking systems, and every credible analytical framework says so. And then, if the bracket holds, they will face Australia or Egypt, and then, in the semifinals, Colombia or Switzerland, or Algeria or Ghana. While France face Spain, while England face Portugal, while Brazil navigate the bracket that also contains Morocco and Norway, and Ivory Coast and Sweden. The tournament has arrived at its most critical stage with its weight distributed unevenly across two halves that bear little resemblance to each other in terms of the obstacles they present. 15 countries have genuine reason to look at the bracket and feel frustrated by its shape. One country is looking at it and feeling something quite different. What do you think? Does the bracket controversy undermine the legitimacy of whatever Argentina might achieve from here? Or is the argument that they simply did what every team does? They won their group, they took what the draw gave them, and the rest of the football world's frustration is not their problem. If you found this worth your time, a like helps more than you think. Subscribe if you enjoy thoughtful football coverage, and let me know your view in the comments. I read everyone.